The morning sun had not yet touched the rooftops of Accra when Amara Osi, a 22-year-old young woman, opened her tired eyes. The small, dimly lit room she shared with her 3 younger siblings smelled of boiled maize and old soap. The cracked walls showed years of wear, and the ceiling fan hung motionless due to another night without electricity. But Amara didn't complain. Today was too important. She got up from the thin mattress carefully so she wouldn't wake her youngest brother, Sammy, who slept curled beside her. Her heart beat fast, not from fear, but from the weight of hope. Today was the day of her final stage interview at Heartspring Foundation, a well-known NGO that changed lives. Getting this job meant her family wouldn't have to go hungry anymore. It meant no more chasing after cleaning jobs, selling fried plantain on the roadside, or begging their landlord, who had already warned them of eviction if they didn't pay rent by month's end. Amara tiptoed to the corner of the room where her friend, Benedicta, waited. Benedicta lived in the next compound, but came over to wait for her so they can go together. Benedicta was the opposite of Amara, flashy, bold, and always wearing the best clothes she could borrow or buy. Her earrings sparkled even in the dark, and her nails were painted bright pink. "Are you ready?" Benedicta asked, adjusting her stylish blouse and flipping her braids over her shoulder. Her tone was excited. Amara nodded with a nervous smile. She quickly packed her documents, kissed her sleepy siblings on their foreheads, and whispered, "Pray for me." As they stepped into the early morning streets, the city was just waking up. Mothers were setting up food stalls, bus conductors were already shouting prices, and sleepy children walked slowly to school. The girls walked fast, their shoes tapping on the dusty ground. Amara's heart pounded louder with each step. She had only one chance. On the way, her thoughts drifted to how hard life had been since her father died 2 years ago. No relatives came to help. Everyone said, "We're also struggling." Amara had become mother and father to her siblings. She was tired, but never gave up. "We must be early," Benedicta said, checking her wristwatch. "They said no latecomers." "I know," Amara replied quietly. She held her folder tight and whispered a short prayer in her heart. "Dear God, please don't let anything go wrong today." But fate had its own plan. Just a few minutes away from the Heartspring building, they heard a strange sound, a cry, low and painful. It was coming from the roadside. Amara turned quickly and saw a small boy, around 10 years old, sitting on the ground. His tiny wheelchair had flipped over, his knees were bleeding, and his bag of handmade bead items was scattered all over the busy road. Some cars honked as they drove past without care. The boy cried louder as people passed him without stopping. Some looked away. One man even muttered, "This is why I hate beggars." Amara's heart sank. Her eyes met the boy's. His pain was too real to ignore. But Benedicta rolled her eyes. "We don't have time for this. Amara, don't even think about it." Amara stood still, confused and torn. Her hands trembled slightly. "If you help that boy, we'll be late," Benedicta hissed. "You want to throw your life away for a cripple? Don't be foolish. Think about your siblings." Amara looked at the boy again. Then she looked at Benedicta. "I can't pretend not to see him," she whispered. "If I miss the interview, then so be it." Benedicta shook her head in disbelief. "Suit yourself. I hope you don't regret it," she snapped, then walked off angrily without looking back. Amara took a deep breath and ran to the boy, unaware that her kind heart had just changed everything. Amara knelt beside the boy on the dusty roadside, her knees pressing against tiny pebbles. The traffic moved fast around them, but she didn't care. Her first thought was to calm the boy, whose tiny chest was rising and falling too quickly from crying. "Don't worry, okay? You're safe now," Amara said gently, wiping the tears from his dusty face with the edge of her sleeve. The boy looked up at her with large, wet eyes. His skin was dark and smooth, but one side of his cheek had been bruised from falling. His small hands were scratched, and his right sandal was missing. His wheelchair lay beside him, one wheel bent and shaking slightly whenever a bus drove by too fast. Amara looked around. People were walking past without a glance. Some stepped over the spilled beads on the ground. One woman even hissed and said, "This nonsense again," always blocking the road. Amara felt something twist inside her chest. How could they be so cold? She quickly started picking up the beads one by one. They were tiny and colorful, red, blue, yellow, green, all handmade with love. The boy watched her, sniffing quietly. "My name is Amara," she said, trying to distract him. "What's yours?" "Chica," he replied in a soft voice. "Chica, that's a beautiful name. These beads you made, they're very nice." She smiled. Chica gave a weak nod. "I sell them to help my aunt. She's sick at home." Amara's heart squeezed. She knew what it meant to be poor and helpless, but still trying. A vendor from a nearby fruit stand noticed her struggle and came over. He was a kind-looking man in his 40s, with a round belly and sweat running down his face. "Madam, you need help?" he asked in a concerned tone. "Yes, please," Amara said quickly. "Can we straighten this wheelchair?" Together they lifted the chair and slowly adjusted the bent wheel as best as they could. The vendor also gave Chica a bottle of water and asked someone to bring a cloth to clean his wounds. Amara reached into her small purse and pulled out her last cedis. It wasn't much, just enough for a simple meal or transportation, but she gave it to the vendor. "Please buy food for him," she said. The vendor nodded respectfully. "God bless you, sister." When the chair was fixed enough for Chica to sit, Amara helped him back into it. She used a tissue to dab gently at his scraped knees, tears stinging her own eyes as she did. "You'll be okay now, Chica," she whispered. Just then she looked at her wristwatch and her stomach dropped. The interview! Her legs felt heavy. She had completely forgotten the time. She stood quickly and told the vendor, "Please help him get home safely." The man nodded again. "Leave it to me." Amara took off, running with all the energy she had left. Her flats slapped against the road, dust rising with each step. Her heart was racing, not just from the run but from the panic. She turned the last corner and saw the big black gates of Heart Spring Foundation. Her heart leaped with hope, but the gates were closed. No, please," she whispered, running to the entrance. A tall woman in a neat blue uniform stood beside the gate, flipping through a clipboard. "I'm sorry," the woman said without looking up. "You're late. The interviews are over." "Please, madam," Amara begged, panting. "I was delayed. I helped a child in need on the way. Please, just give me a chance to explain." The woman shook her head. "I'm sorry. Rules are rules." Amara's shoulders dropped. Her eyes blurred with tears as she turned around slowly. And just then, Benedicta came out through the side door, her face glowing with pride. She was holding a bottle of water and fixing her skirt. Their eyes met. Benedicta looked away quickly and walked past Amara without saying a word. Amara swallowed hard. Her body felt weak. Her legs could barely hold her. She took one last look at the building that carried all her hopes, then turned around and walked home, each step heavier than the last. When she got to her small house, her siblings ran to hug her, asking, "Did you get the job? Did they like you?" Amara forced a smile. "Not today, my darlings." That night she cried quietly on her bed. She had done what was right, but it felt like she had lost everything. She stared at the ceiling in silence, her heart heavy with sadness. The morning sun filtered through the thin curtain in Amara's small room, painting soft yellow light across the wall. But it didn't bring any joy to her heart. She had barely slept the night before. Her eyes were swollen, and her pillow was still damp from silent tears. She sat up slowly, rubbing her hands together, feeling the cold bite of the morning air. Her siblings were still sleeping, their little faces peaceful. Amara looked at them and sighed deeply. They had no idea she had lost the one chance that could have changed everything. Yet, even though she had missed the interview, Amara did not regret helping the boy. Something inside her knew she had done the right thing. As she stood to make pap for breakfast, a knock sounded on the front door. Her heart jumped. She wasn't expecting anyone, and they were already behind on rent. She feared it might be the landlord, Mr. Otobo, coming to warn them again. She quickly wiped her eyes, fixed her wrapper, and opened the door. But it wasn't the landlord. A young man stood there, dressed in a fine black suit. He had a calm face, and in his hand was a white envelope with her name written neatly on it. "Good morning," he said politely. "Are you Miss Amara Ose?" "Yes, I am," Amara answered slowly, confused. "This is for you," he said, handing her the envelope. Before she could ask another question, he bowed slightly and walked away. Amara stood at the door for a few seconds, staring at the envelope. Her hands shook as she opened it. Her eyes scanned the neat writing inside. "Dear Miss Ose, you are invited to return to Heart Spring Foundation in 2 days' time at 10 o'clock in the morning for a special briefing. Kindly come to the founder's office directly. This is not another interview. We look forward to seeing you. Admin Heart Spring Foundation." She blinked twice. "What is this?" she whispered. She read the letter again. Then she rushed inside and sat on the bed. Her heart began to beat fast, not with fear, but with something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. 2 days later, Amara arrived at Heart Spring Foundation again. This time, she wore her cleanest white blouse and a simple long skirt. Her hair was neatly packed into a bun, and though she didn't wear makeup, her face looked bright with curiosity and nervousness. The building looked more beautiful than she remembered. The walls were white and smooth, the flower gardens neatly arranged, and the glass doors shining under the sun. She was led inside by a gentlewoman at the front desk, who smiled kindly. "You are expected. Please follow me." They went through a quiet hallway until they stopped at a big wooden door with a gold nameplate. "Mr. Kwesi Agyemang, founder." The woman knocked softly, then opened the door. Amara stepped in. The office was wide and warm. There was a big bookshelf filled with books, a large window with sunlight pouring in, and family pictures on the desk. Behind the desk sat an older man with grey hair and kind eyes. His skin was dark and smooth, and his smile was gentle. "Good morning, Miss Ose," he said, standing up. "Please, have a seat." "Good morning, sir," Amara replied, sitting down nervously. Mr. Agyemang studied her quietly for a few seconds. Then he smiled wider. "You don't know me," he began, "but you know someone dear to me." Amara frowned slightly. "Sir, you helped a small boy a few days ago. His name is Chika." Amara's eyes widened. "Yes, he had a broken wheelchair." Mr. Agyemang nodded. "Chika is my nephew." Amara gasped softly. Her hands flew to her mouth. "I didn't know." "I know," he said. "That day we placed him there on purpose. He volunteered to help me test something very important." Amara was now speechless. "You see," he continued, "we were not only looking for people with good papers or smart answers. We wanted to see who truly had a heart for the people." He paused and looked at her straight in the eyes. "You were the only one who stopped, the only one who cared." Amara felt tears rising in her eyes again, but this time, they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of shock, relief, and joy all mixed together. "Miss Amara, would you like to work with us? Not as a regular worker, but in a leadership role, where you will help people like Chika every day." Amara couldn't speak. Her lips trembled as she nodded. Mr. Agyemang reached into his drawer and brought out another envelope. "This has your offer letter, a housing allowance for your family, and a scholarship for you to study further if you wish." Amara stood up slowly. Her hands were shaking. "Thank you, sir. Thank you. I don't know what to say." "You've already said everything." He smiled. "That day, with your actions, A soft wind blew across the small compound where Amara and her siblings lived. The walls were old and had cracks, and the roof always leaked when it rained. But today, everything felt different. Even the tiny kitchen smelled sweeter than usual. Amara sat in the center of the room. Her younger siblings, Tolu, Mimi, and Sammy, gathered around her. Their eyes were wide with excitement as she told them the good news. "God has done it for us," she said, her voice filled with joy. "I got the job, and not just any job. I'm now working at Heartspring Foundation." Mimi jumped up. "Really?" "Yes, baby, and we're moving to a better house. No more sleeping on the mat, no more sharing one plate of food." Tolu's eyes filled with tears. She hugged her tightly. "Thank you, Amara. You didn't give up on us." Sammy, the youngest, didn't fully understand but clapped and laughed, repeating, "We are rich now. We are rich now." That evening, they ate jollof rice with fried plantain and meat, something they hadn't enjoyed in months. For the first time in a long while, laughter filled the room. Amara looked at her siblings and smiled with tears in her eyes. The pain, the struggles, the rejections, it had all been worth it. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Benedicta stood alone at her mirror. Her room was quiet and cold. She had just received a message from Heartspring Foundation. The message was short and sharp. "We regret to inform you that your application has been withdrawn due to issues found during background verification." Benedicta's hands dropped to her side. Her face was stiff. She had lied in her CV to make herself look better, and she had also failed the test. Now, not only had she lost the job, but the one person she had looked down on, Amara, was now the one everyone was talking about. Her phone buzzed. A neighbor had sent her a link to Heartspring's social media page. The headline read, "Meet our newest team lead, Amara Osi, the woman who chose kindness over career." Benedicta dropped the phone. She felt shame, but instead of reaching out, she stayed silent, avoiding calls and hiding from neighbors who had once praised her. Back at Heartspring Foundation, Amara walked into her new office. It wasn't too big, but it was bright and full of promise. A small nameplate sat on her new desk. Amara Osi, Community Outreach Lead. Her heart swelled with gratitude. She remembered the boy, Chica, and how the world had ignored him. She knew many others like him were out there, children living with disabilities, struggling for help, yet invisible to society. She stood up and went to the board beside her desk. She wrote in big, bold letters, "Project The Hands We Don't Ignore." This would be her first mission. A program that would go into communities, find disabled children, and help them with school, food, and equipment like wheelchairs. She would use her story to inspire others. 2 weeks later, Heartspring hosted a big event to announce Amara's new project. Parents, students, staff, and news reporters all gathered in the hall. Chica sat in front, his face bright with joy as Amara told the crowd how he changed her life. When everyone walked past, he didn't cry because of his pain. Amara said, her voice shaking with emotion. He cried because he was invisible. But from today, no child like Chica will be ignored again. The crowd clapped loudly. Mr. Agyemang nodded with pride. After the event, Amara and Chica stood side by side as people came to shake their hands. Amara wore a beautiful purple dress with tiny golden patterns, and Chica had a new shiny wheelchair with his name printed on the back. As the sun set behind the Heartspring building, Amara looked up at the sky. She whispered softly, "Thank you, Papa. I made it." Then she turned to Chica and said, "Let's go. We have work to do." And just like that, a new journey began, one filled with love, kindness, and a heart that refused to walk away.